Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Nazi Germany from 1934 to 1945, remains the ultimate symbol of evil in the modern world. His name is inseparable from the Holocaust, one of the most meticulously planned and brutally executed genocides ever recorded. Driven by a fanatical and racist ideology of Aryan supremacy, Hitler's regime targeted European Jews for total annihilation. This wasn't merely war, it was an industry of death. The Nazis established a network of extermination camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau, where they used gas chambers and crematoria for mass murder on an unprecedented scale. Mobile killing squads, the Einsatzgruppen, carried out mass shootings across Eastern Europe, gunning down men, women, and children in cold blood. The scale of this tragedy is staggering. By the end of the war, 6 million Jews had been systematically murdered. But the victims of Nazism also included millions of others: Romani people, Poles and other Slavic peoples, Soviet prisoners of war, disabled individuals, and political and religious dissenters. Furthermore, Hitler's insatiable ambition and invasion of Poland in 1939 ignited World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, which claimed the lives of an estimated 70 to 85 million people. His legacy is not one of a nation builder, but of a man who brought the world to its knees. The swastika, once an ancient symbol, is now forever tainted, representing a terrifying warning of where unchecked hatred and the ideology of dehumanization can lead. Joseph Stalin, the man of steel, ruled the Soviet Union with an iron fist for nearly 3 decades, from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. While he transformed the USSR into a global superpower and was instrumental in defeating Nazi Germany, he did so through unimaginable brutality and paranoia. Stalin's power was absolute, and he used it to unleash a reign of terror upon his own people. His infamous Great Purge in the late 1930s was a wave of political repression where anyone deemed a threat, from top party officials and military leaders to ordinary citizens, was arrested, tortured, and often executed after sham trials. Millions more were condemned to the Gulag, a vast and brutal network of forced labor camps stretching across Siberia, where prisoners were worked to death through starvation, disease, and exposure. Stalin's cruelty was also evident in his agricultural policies. The forced collectivization of farming led to a catastrophic man-made famine from 1932 to 1933. In Ukraine, this event is known as the Holodomor, or death by hunger, a genocide that killed millions of peasants. Historical estimates of the total number of deaths under Stalin's rule vary, but most scholars place the figure between 20 and 30 million victims, with some estimates running even higher. His legacy is one of deep-seated fear and trauma that permeated every level of Soviet society. He created a powerful state, but it was a state built on the bones of its own citizens, leaving a scar on the Russian psyche that endures to this day. As the founding father of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong ruled the world's most populous nation from 1949 until his death in 1976. He is a figure of immense and controversial significance, credited with unifying China, but also responsible for social and economic experiments that led to death on a colossal scale. Mao's most catastrophic policy was the Great Leap Forward, launched in 1958. This campaign aimed to rapidly transform China from an agrarian society into a communist industrial powerhouse. However, the plan was disastrous. Unrealistic production goals, combined with the diversion of farmers to backyard steel furnaces, led to a complete collapse of the agricultural system. The result was the Great Chinese Famine, the single deadliest famine in human history, which caused the deaths of an estimated 15 to 55 million people from starvation. A decade later, Mao unleashed the Cultural Revolution to reassert his authority and purge society of capitalist and traditional elements. It was a period of violent chaos where youth militias known as the Red Guards were encouraged to persecute, torture, and kill intellectuals, teachers, and even their own family members. Historical artifacts, temples, and libraries were destroyed in a fanatical effort to erase the past. This decade of terror resulted in the deaths of another 1 to 2 million people. To this day, Mao's legacy is fiercely debated. The Chinese Communist Party officially assesses him as 70% good, 30% bad. But for the tens of millions who perished under his rule, his legacy is one of nothing but famine, persecution, and death. In the mid-1970s, the world witnessed one of the most radical and violent societal experiments ever attempted. From 1975 to 1979, Cambodia fell under the rule of the Khmer Rouge, a communist movement led by the enigmatic and ruthless Pol Pot. His goal was to create a purely agrarian, classless society by resetting the calendar to year zero. To achieve this utopia, he unleashed a genocide that turned the country into a network of killing fields. Immediately after seizing power, the Khmer Rouge forced millions of people out of the cities and into the countryside to work as slave laborers on collective farms. Money, private property, religion, and modern education were abolished. Family bonds were systematically broken, with children being turned against their parents. The regime's paranoia was boundless. Anyone considered an intellectual, which could mean something as simple as wearing glasses or knowing a foreign language, was marked for death. Ethnic minorities, such as the Vietnamese and Cham Muslims, were targeted for extermination. The most infamous symbol of this horror was the Tuol Sleng prison, also known as S21, a former high school in Phnom Penh converted into a torture center. Out of an estimated 20,000 prisoners who were sent there, only a handful survived. During Pol Pot's 4-year reign of terror, it is estimated that between 1.7 and 2 million people perished, representing nearly a quarter of Cambodia's entire population. They died from execution, torture, starvation, and disease. Pol Pot's legacy is the near-total destruction of a nation's culture, spirit, and people, leaving a trauma so deep that Cambodia is still grappling with its scars today. We now travel back to the 13th century, to the vast steppes of Central Asia, to a name that evokes images of both a brilliant unifier and a merciless conqueror: Genghis Khan. Born as Temujin, he rose from humble beginnings to unite the fractious Mongol tribes and forge the largest contiguous land empire in history. He was a master military strategist and a visionary ruler who established the Silk Road as a secure artery for trade and cultural exchange. He implemented a writing system and a legal code, the Yasa, which forbade theft, adultery, and the kidnapping of women. Within Mongolia, he is revered as the nation's founding father, a figure of immense pride and historical significance. However, for the world outside Mongolia, his legacy is written in blood. The Mongol conquests were characterized by a level of brutality that was shocking even for the violent standards of the era. Genghis Khan employed psychological warfare with devastating effect, deliberately cultivating a reputation for terror. Cities that resisted Mongol rule were often utterly annihilated, their populations systematically massacred. In cities like Samarkand and Herat, historical accounts describe Mongol warriors slaughtering men, women, and children without mercy, even beheading pets and livestock. They used captured civilians as human shields in their sieges. While precise figures are impossible to verify, historians estimate that the Mongol invasions led to the deaths of between 20 and 40 million people, and a dramatic decline in the populations of China, Persia, and parts of Europe. His legacy is therefore profoundly dualistic, a nation builder for his own people, but a destructive force of nature for those who stood in his path. Few rulers have hidden such monstrous crimes behind a mask of public respectability as King Leopold II of Belgium. In the late 19th century, during the scramble for Africa, Leopold cunningly convinced the world's leaders to grant him personal control over a vast territory in Central Africa, which he named the Congo Free State. He presented his mission as a humanitarian endeavor, promising to bring civilization, Christianity, and an end to the slave trade. But the reality was a brutal system of forced labor and exploitation on an epic scale. Leopold's true goal was to extract the region's immense wealth, primarily in rubber and ivory. His private army, the Force Publique, was used to terrorize the local population into meeting impossibly high rubber quotas. The methods used were barbaric. Villages that failed to deliver their quota were burned to the ground. Hostages were taken, and a system of summary executions was put in place. The most infamous practice was the severing of hands. Force Publique soldiers, who were issued bullets and had to account for every one they used, would cut off the hands of their victims as proof of an execution. When they used bullets for hunting or wasted them, they would simply cut the hands off living men, women, and even children. It is estimated that during Leopold's 23-year personal rule, the population of the Congo was reduced by as much as 50%, with a death toll estimated to be between 8 and 15 million people due to murder, starvation, and disease. Leopold's legacy is one of the most horrific and often overlooked chapters of colonial history, a genocide fueled by pure, unadulterated greed. Charismatic, unpredictable, and pathologically violent, Idi Amin Dada ruled Uganda as a military dictator from 1971 to 1979. His 8-year reign was a chaotic and terrifying period of gross human rights abuses, political repression, and economic decline. Initially welcomed by some after overthrowing a corrupt predecessor, Amin's true nature quickly revealed itself. He established state-sponsored death squads, such as the State Research Bureau and the Public Safety Unit, who were empowered to abduct, torture, and murder anyone perceived as an opponent. Bodies of his victims, often showing signs of horrific mutilation, were frequently dumped into the River Nile for all to see. He engaged in widespread ethnic persecution, particularly targeting the Acholi and Longo ethnic groups, who he believed were loyal to the former president. In 1972, Amin ordered the expulsion of Uganda's entire Asian population, some 60,000 people, giving them just 90 days to leave the country. He claimed it was a move to put the economy back into the hands of Ugandans, but it triggered a complete economic collapse. His behavior became increasingly erratic and bizarre. He declared himself the King of Scotland and awarded himself numerous medals. Beneath the buffoonish persona, however, was a ruthless killer. It is estimated that between 100,000 and 500,000 Ugandans were murdered during his reign. Amin was finally overthrown in 1979 after a disastrous war with neighboring Tanzania. He fled into a comfortable exile and never faced justice for his crimes. His legacy is that of a brutal buffoon, a man whose reign of terror tore a nation apart and earned him the infamous title, the Butcher of Uganda. Benito Mussolini was the architect of fascism and the dictator who ruled Italy as Il Duce from 1922 to 1943. While his death toll is not on the same scale as Hitler or Stalin, his creation of a totalitarian ideology and his alliance with Nazi Germany had catastrophic consequences for Italy and the world. Mussolini rose to power through intimidation, using his black shirt paramilitary squads to crush political opponents and instill fear. Once in power, he dismantled Italy's democratic institutions, abolished opposition parties, enforced strict censorship, and created a secret police force, the OVRA, to eliminate dissent. He promoted a cult of personality, projecting an image of himself as a virile, infallible leader who would restore Italy to the glory of the Roman Empire. His imperial ambitions led him to invade Ethiopia in 1935, where the Italian military used chemical weapons against civilians, and later Albania in 1939. However, his most fateful decision was to form the Pact of Steel with Adolf Hitler. By tying Italy's fate to Nazi Germany, Mussolini dragged his nation into World War II, a conflict for which it was woefully unprepared. This led to the deaths of nearly 500,000 Italians, including soldiers and civilians, and left the country devastated. Overthrown and briefly imprisoned in 1943, he was eventually captured and executed by Italian partisans in 1945. Mussolini's legacy is complex. Some still praise him for public works projects, but he is overwhelmingly remembered as the man who pioneered a dangerous ideology, sacrificed his people for his own vainglory, and became a junior partner in one of history's greatest crimes. What do you think? Did we miss anyone on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe for next